The morning Liam walked out of that hospital room, I knew my life was over. Not in that dramatic way people talk about. The way they mean when they miss a flight or lose their phone. No, I mean truly, irrevocably, over. Everything I had built, every lie I had whispered to myself to justify what I'd done, it all came crashing down with the sound of his footsteps, walking away, from me, and from the baby in the plastic bassinet beside my bed. Looking back now, 3 years later, I can see the fault lines. They were there all along. I just chose not to see them. Our life, from the outside, was something people in Port Blossom envied. A restored craftsman house with a view of the Sound, the fog rolling in over the water every morning. Liam was a commercial fisherman, a captain on a long-haul vessel that chased salmon and crab all the way to the icy waters of Alaska. The money was incredible, but the cost was time. He'd be gone for 6, sometimes 8 weeks at a stretch, then home for 2. A ghost in his own life. My life. The loneliness didn't hit me like a wave. It was more like a tide, creeping in slowly, inch by inch, until I was submerged and didn't even realize I was drowning. First, it was the dinners. Cooking a meal for one. The silence of the house broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. Then it was the empty space beside me in bed, a cold void that felt bigger every night. It was the invitations to dinner parties, to barbecues, where I'd show up alone, forcing a smile and explaining, yet again, Liam's up north, should be back next month. I became Clara, the fisherman's wife. A title, not a person. I told myself I was strong, independent. I poured everything into my work to fill that void. I was a senior account manager at Vivid PR, a boutique agency downtown that handled high-end lifestyle brands. I took on the toughest clients, stayed later than anyone, volunteered for every extra project. The office became my sanctuary, my escape. And that's where I met Julian. Julian Croft. He was a senior partner at the firm, the kind of man who walks into a room and the air pressure changes. He wasn't handsome in a classic way. He was compelling. Dark hair, intense eyes that seemed to see right through the professional mask I wore. He had a way of speaking, low and deliberate, that made you lean in. He made you feel like you were the only person in the universe. It started so innocently, late nights brainstorming a new campaign for a luxury hotel chain. Chinese takeout containers spread across the polished mahogany of the boardroom table. He was going through a messy breakup, or so he said. We'd commiserate over spreadsheets and glasses of expensive wine he kept in his office. He listened. That was his secret weapon. The only reason he had stayed, the only reason he was in this hospital at all, was to wait for Sophie to be born, so he could take the DNA test he had already arranged. My mother stayed with me, but the disappointment in her eyes was almost worse than Liam's anger. She helped with Sophie, she cooked, she cleaned, but a heavy silence hung between us. I raised you better than this, Clara, she said one night as Sophie wailed in her crib. That man adored you, and you threw it all away. Breathing the same air. That meant more than I was willing to admit. He was the lifeline I grasped for in an ocean of my own quiet desperation. An ocean I didn't even know I was in until he pointed it out. The first time he kissed me, it was after one of those late nights. We'd just landed a massive account, and the energy in the office was electric. We were the last 2 left, sharing a celebratory glass of champagne. He was standing close, telling me how my strategy had been the thing that sealed the deal. And then his hand was on my cheek, and his lips were on mine. I pulled back instantly. A jolt of panic and shame shot through me. I can't, I whispered, my voice shaking. Julian, I'm married. I know, he said, his eyes searching mine. He didn't look sorry. He looked patient. He didn't push. He simply nodded, took a small step back, and the moment was over. But it wasn't. That rejection seemed to fuel him. He became even more attentive after that. A coffee on my desk in the morning. A text with a funny meme in the middle of a stressful meeting. When Liam would call, distracted by a storm brewing in the Gulf of Alaska, Julian would be right there, a solid, reassuring presence in my life. I held out for 2 months. 2 months of fighting an attraction that felt like gravity. I told myself I loved Liam. I did. But what I felt for Julian was different. It was a drug. A potent, intoxicating mix of attention and desire that I hadn't realized I was starving for. The end came on a Tuesday. I'd had a terrible day at work, a client threatening to pull their account. I was close to tears when I left the office. As I got to my car, my phone buzzed. It was Julian. Are you okay? That was all it took. 4 simple words. Instead of driving home to my empty house, I drove to his sleek, minimalist apartment downtown. When he opened the door, I didn't say a word. I just stepped inside, and when he kissed me this time, I didn't push him away. Just this once, I told myself, my head spinning from the wine and the thrill of it. Just this kiss. But one kiss became 2, became my coat on his floor, became a full-blown affair that would burn my entire world to the ground. At first, the guilt was a physical thing. I would leave his apartment and drive home, scrubbing myself raw in the shower as if I could wash away his touch, his scent. When Liam called, his cheerful, trusting voice was like a knife in my gut. I could barely speak. But Julian was addictive. 3, sometimes 4 evenings a week. Whenever Liam was at sea, I'd be at his apartment. We had a system, a routine. I even had a code with my friend Chloe, a story about a book club I could use as an alibi, though I never needed it. He was so smooth, so practiced. He'd tell me stories about his crazy ex-girlfriend who couldn't accept their breakup, how she'd harass him with calls at all hours. I actually felt sorry for him. I offered him comfort, which he expertly turned into intimacy. The manipulation was so seamless, I never saw it for what it was. I thought I was special. I didn't know I was just the Tuesday and Thursday girl in a long line of lonely, married women. I almost ended it once. About 3 months in, Liam had surprised me, his boat getting back to port a day early. I was at Julian's when my phone rang, Liam's picture flashing on the screen. "Hey, honey, I'm home. Where are you?" he asked, his voice booming with happiness. Ice water flooded my veins. The world tilted on its axis. "Oh my God, I'm at Chloe's," I stammered, my heart hammering against my ribs. Her dog is sick. We're at the emergency vet." "Oh, poor thing. Well, don't rush. I'm just unpacking. Can't wait to see you." Expiry. He believed me. Of course he did. Liam trusted me completely. That night, lying in his arms, he held me close and told me how much he'd missed me. The guilt was a suffocating blanket. I almost confessed everything right then and there. I opened my mouth, the words on the tip of my tongue. But I was a coward. Instead, I just held him tighter and promised myself, I'll end it with Julian. Tomorrow. But I didn't. The moment Liam's duffel bag was packed for his next trip, the moment his truck disappeared down the street, I was back in Julian's apartment, falling into the same destructive pattern. The guilt was easier to ignore after that. I'd already crossed the line so many times. What was one more? 4 months into the affair, my period was late. I told myself it was stress. This double life was exhausting. My body was just reacting. But a second week passed, then a third. I knew. The 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test felt like a death sentence. The timing was a nightmare. Liam had been home the first week of July. We'd been together. But I had also been with Julian right before Liam got home, and immediately after he left. There was no way to know for sure. Not without a test I couldn't possibly take without detonating my marriage. I told Julian first. We were at his place, and I just blurted it out. "I'm pregnant." End. His expression shifted through a series I will never forget. Surprise, calculation, fear, and finally, a cold, hard mask of determination. "It's not mine, Clara," he said, his voice flat. "What? You don't know that. You were with your husband that week. Liam. It's his." His tone left no room for argument. "But what if it isn't?" I whispered, my voice small and trembling. "It is," he said firmly, grabbing my shoulders. "And even if there's a 1 in a million chance it's not, he will never know. You make sure of that. Do you understand me?" That was the moment I should have seen him. Not as the charming, attentive lover, but as the ruthless, self-serving monster he truly was. But I was pregnant, and terrified, and desperate to believe the lie. Julian ended things with me that night. He said it was too risky to continue. He said I needed to focus on my marriage, on the baby. He framed it as a noble sacrifice he was making for my sake. The next day, when I finally worked up the courage to tell Liam, his reaction was pure, unadulterated joy. He picked me up and spun me around our sun-drenched kitchen, tears in his eyes. He started talking about names, about painting the spare room blue or yellow, about how he was going to be the best dad in the world. Every joyful word was another twist of the knife in my heart. But I smiled. I played along. I let myself believe the beautiful lie, because the truth was simply too ugly to face. The next 9 months were a special kind of hell. Every moment of shared joy with Liam was tainted by my secret. We painted the nursery together a soft, buttery yellow. He assembled the crib, his brow furrowed in concentration over the instructions. We went to birthing classes. He was so enthusiastic, so present in a way I had craved for years. And all I felt was a crushing, suffocating guilt. Seeing Julian at work was torture. He was polite, professional, distant, as if we were nothing more than colleagues, as if he had never whispered promises in my ear or left marks on my skin. He'd moved on. I heard through the office grapevine. Another woman from the finance department. Another lonely wife. I felt sick. When my daughter was born, she was perfect. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. A full head of dark hair, and tiny, perfect fingers that curled around mine. I named her Sophie. Liam was supposed to be overjoyed, but something was wrong. My mother and his were in the room, cooing over the baby. But Liam, he stood by the window, his back to us, looking out at the city lights. He didn't hold her. He didn't even look at her. "Honey?" I asked, my voice light, trying to ignore the knot of dread tightening in my stomach. "Don't you want to hold your daughter?" He turned around slowly. His face was a mask I didn't recognize. It was cold, hard. All the warmth I loved was gone. That's when he said the words that shattered my world. "I think we should wait for the DNA results, before I get too attached." The air left the room. My mother gasped. His mother looked like she'd been slapped. I felt the floor drop out from under me. "What?" I tried to sound shocked, hurt. "How could you? What kind of woman do you think I am?" But he wasn't buying it. The performance was over. "I know, Clara," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "And even if there's a 1 in a million chance it's not, he will never know. You make sure of that. Do you understand me?" That was the moment I should have seen him. Not as the charming, attentive lover, but as the ruthless, self-serving monster he truly was. But I was pregnant, and terrified, and desperate to believe the lie. Julian ended things with me that night. He said it was too risky to continue. He said I needed to focus on my marriage, on the baby. But that woman confessed to her husband, and her husband knew one of Liam's friends from the docks. The dominoes had fallen, one by one, leading right back to me. I wasn't just a cheater. I was a fool. A cliché who'd fallen for the oldest tricks in the book. I tried to explain, to make excuses. I was lonely. He was gone so much. It didn't mean anything. All the pathetic, flimsy justifications I had used on myself. They sounded hollow and disgusting in the sterile hospital air. When I let it slip, that Julian had called a few days before, just to check in, I saw the last flicker of love die in Liam's eyes. He left that day. While I was still in the hospital, learning to breastfeed a baby whose paternity was in question, he went to our beautiful house on the hill, packed his things, and moved into an apartment he had already rented. He had known for over a week. He had spent that time planning his escape. Liam was supposed to be overjoyed, but something was wrong. My mother and his were in the room, cooing over the baby. But Liam, he stood by the window, his back to us, looking out at the city lights. He didn't hold her. He didn't even look at her. "Honey?" I asked, my voice light, trying to ignore the knot of dread tightening in my stomach. "Don't you want to hold your daughter?" He turned around slowly. His face was a mask I didn't recognize. It was cold, hard. For what? A few months of feeling exciting? The DNA results came back 2 days later. Liam didn't bring them himself. He had his lawyer messenger them over. The envelope felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Inside, in stark black and white, was the confirmation of my deepest fear. Probability of paternity, 0%. Liam was not Sophie's father. Julian was. The divorce papers arrived the next morning. What followed was not just the end of a marriage, but the complete demolition of a life. When Liam called from the boat, the connection crackling, his voice distant and tired, he'd ask about the car, the bills, the leak in the roof. He was managing logistics. Julian, on the other hand, would ask about me. "Tough day?" he'd ask, leaning against my office doorframe after everyone else had gone home. "The usual," I'd sigh, rubbing my temples. "You carry too much, Clara," he'd say, his voice soft. "Let someone else take the weight for a while." He was there, physically there. Friends I'd had for years stopped returning my calls. Invitations dried up. At work, people would stop talking and stare when I walked by. I couldn't take the whispers, the looks of pity and disgust. I quit my job. My best friend, Chloe, the one who was supposed to be my alibi, told me she couldn't trust me around her husband anymore. If you could do that to Liam, she asked, her voice cold. A man who gave you everything. What else are you capable of? I couldn't even argue. She was right. Julian, of course, wanted nothing to do with me or the baby. When my lawyer contacted him about child support, he laughed. Prove it, was his response. The legal battle that followed drained what little money I had left. He dragged it out, demanding more tests, psychological evaluations, anything to delay and complicate the process. In the courthouse hallway, during one of the hearings, I saw two other women there for the same reason. We made eye contact, a silent acknowledgement of our shared humiliation. One of them, a woman named Patricia, approached me. Tuesday and Thursday evenings? She asked quietly. I just nodded, my cheeks burning with shame. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for me, she said with a bitter laugh. The bastard had us on a schedule. Then came the news. Julian had been attacked during his early morning jog along the waterfront. Someone had left him on the sidewalk. The police investigated, but with a long list of angry husbands and no solid evidence, the case went cold. When I heard about it, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, just a vast, hollow emptiness. I called Liam once, months after the divorce was finalized. My mother had pushed me to apologize properly. He listened to my rambling, tearful apology in silence. When I finished, he asked, his voice devoid of emotion, "What exactly are you apologizing for, Clara? For the affair? For getting pregnant? For lying to my face for almost a year? Or are you just sorry you got caught?" I couldn't answer. He must have heard the truth in my silence. "You never even said you were sorry in the hospital," he said quietly. "You just made excuses. You're not sorry you did it. You're just sorry it didn't work out the way you planned." He was right. When I asked if he knew what happened to Julian, his voice turned to ice. "He got what he deserved," he said, and hung up. That was the last time we ever spoke. I moved back into my childhood bedroom in my mother's house. I was 34 years old, a single mother with no job, no husband, and a reputation that followed me everywhere I went. Raising Sophie alone was harder than I could have ever imagined. Every milestone was bittersweet. Her first smile, her first word, her first steps. These were moments that should have been shared. When she looked at me with her dark eyes, so much like Julian's, I saw my betrayal reflected back at me. Through the grapevine, I heard about Liam's new life. He'd taken a shore-based job, managing the fleet. He was seeing someone new, a woman named Anna who, according to mutual acquaintances, was everything I wasn't. Loyal, trustworthy, kind. I saw pictures. Liam and Anna on vacation in Italy, a place he had always promised to take me. He framed it as a noble sacrifice he was making for my sake. The next day, when I finally worked up the courage to tell Liam, his reaction was pure, unadulterated joy. He picked me up and spun me around our sun-drenched kitchen, tears in his eyes. He started talking about names, about painting the spare room blue or yellow, about how he was going to be the best dad in the world. Every joyful word was another twist of the knife in my heart, but I smiled. I played along. He was standing in the produce section with a woman, Anna. She was beautiful and very pregnant. He had his hand on the small of her back, a gentle, protective gesture he used to use with me. They were laughing about something, and he looked happy. Truly, deeply happy, in a way I hadn't seen in years. He saw me. Our eyes met across a display of shiny red apples. For a single, shattering moment, I saw recognition, maybe a flicker of old pain. But then his expression closed off. He gave me a curt, polite nod, the kind you give a distant acquaintance, and gently guided Anna away. That small gesture, that polite dismissal, hurt more than all the angry words, all the legal documents, all the silent treatments combined. It was the final confirmation that I was no longer a part of his life. I was a ghost from a past he had successfully escaped. I abandoned my shopping cart in the middle of the aisle and fled. That night, I finally broke down completely. Not the tears of self-pity I had cried before, but wrenching, guttural sobs of real understanding. I had done this. Not Liam's absence. Not Julian's charm. Not loneliness. Me. I had made choice after choice that led me to this moment. sitting on the floor of my childhood bedroom while my daughter slept in a second-hand crib down the hall. My mother found me there. For the first time, she didn't lecture. She just held me while I cried. Their engagement announcement. The wedding I heard all about but wasn't invited to. And then, a year later, the pregnancy announcement. They were building the life that should have been mine. The life I had carelessly, stupidly, selfishly thrown away for a man who saw me as a scheduling conflict to be managed. The final, breaking blow came on a gray Wednesday afternoon. I was in the grocery store, Sophie fussing in the cart. And then I saw him, Liam. He was standing in the produce section with a woman, Anna. She was beautiful and very pregnant. He had his hand on the small of her back, a gentle, protective gesture he used to use with me. They were laughing about something, and he looked happy. Truly, deeply happy, in a way I hadn't seen in years. He saw me. Our eyes met across a display of shiny red apples. For a single, shattering moment, I saw recognition, maybe a flicker of old pain. But then his expression closed off. When I finally calmed down, she stroked my hair and said the words that changed everything. "You can't undo what you did, Clara," she said softly. "It's done. But you can decide who you're going to be from now on." For her. She nodded toward Sophie's room. "She didn't ask for any of this. You owe her a mother who isn't drowning in the past." She was right. Therapy helped. Learning to take real responsibility, not just mouth the words. I wrote letters I never sent. I deprived my daughter of a loving, devoted father before she was even born. Some mistakes you can fix. Others, you just have to carry. This one is mine. I carry it every day. When I see a happy family at the park. When Sophie asks why she doesn't have a daddy who comes home from work. When I lie alone in the dark and remember what it felt like to be loved and trusted. My name is Clara Evans, and I am the woman who destroyed her own life. This is my story. My confession. My warning.